Welcome, everybody, to the Green Sunday of the Alameda County Green Party. We do these public programs once a month, and we are very honored this month to present Dr. Jill Stein, who needs no introduction for Greens, but here goes. The Green Party's U.S. presidential candidate in 2024, 2016, and 2012. She's a Harvard-educated MD, a pioneering environmental health advocate, and a longtime organizer for People, Planet, and Peace. She has helped win victories in campaign finance reform, racially just redistricting, and the cleanup of incinerators, coal plants, and other toxic threats. Jill has been awarded for her health and environmental protection, including Clean Water Action's Not in Anyone's Backyard Award, the Children's Health Hero Award, and the Toxic Action Center's Citizen Award. She served on the board of directors for Physicians for Social Responsibility. We are very grateful for all she has done and continues to do at great personal sacrifice for the Green Party, for democracy in the US, for justice and peace on multiple fronts, and for planet Earth. I'm Phoebe Thomas Sorgan, and I would like to just also add that Jill has stayed with me a couple of times when she was in the Bay Area. And so I got to know her a little bit on a personal level. And she's just one of the kindest, wisest, most wonderful people that I hope you all will eventually have the pleasure of knowing. Welcome, Jill.
Thank you, Phoebe. Let me see if I can get my camera going here. Let's see. Okay, great. Hi. So good to see you. So good to see everyone. Really appreciate the chance to have this very timely conversation. You know, we've just come from a really wild and disturbing election, and you know, things continue to explode in what should we say, you know, in just very compelling ways. And it feels like as Greens, we have so much to say about this, and we keep being proven right by the course of world events and our history, our agenda, our policies keep being absolutely right and well ahead of their time. We've been ahead of the curve. The curve continues to catch up with us. And we're kind of at a unique moment right now where we had so much truth to share during the election, and we were so, you know, just intensively silenced. There was an incredible disinformation campaign, a censoring campaign. The election was sort of the ultimate exercise in propaganda, really. So here we are now after the election, and let me just say that coming out of that election, we were number 3. We were at the top of the alternative political parties, and that was a huge achievement for everyone, and a credit to all of the work that people have done with such integrity and such dedication for so many years. And to come out at the top of the heap, so to speak, really at the top of a politics of integrity, being the, you know, the highest vote getter among the grassroots political parties, the parties that are not bought and paid for by Wall Street and the war machine. To have achieved that highest status is a real leap forward, I think, for all of us. And the powers that be, we saw them pulling out all the stops to try to silence us and to vilify us and to smear campaign and fear campaign throughout the election. It was, we saw the Democrats hiring their army of lawyers, which they did early in the campaign for the explicit purpose of throwing competitors off the ballot. And once RFK was out of the way, we were the number one target for the Democrats. They developed their so-called war room. They funded it to the tune of, we don't know exactly, a six-figure budget, which, a lot of money being spent. They had more staff than we had in our entire campaign, strictly for the purpose of disparaging us, smearing us, and trying to silence us. And, they threw us off the ballot wherever they could. They held on to our public matching funds in order to prevent us from getting on the ballot. And they were able to do that by withholding funds when we especially needed them in certain states. And yeah, so, it was just a real show of force by the Democrats that they were running scared like they never have been before. And for the first time, they actually conducted a very high profile public advertising campaign where they took aim at myself, really based on completely ridiculous smears with really nothing, no merit to them and no facts, just really asserting their mythology. So, it was a very kind of watershed campaign for having given such a kind of a run for their money to the Democrats. The Republicans, were not kindly disposed towards us either, but as far as we can tell, they were not spending big money in order to try to tear us down. The Democrats also, they publicly advertised for the first time. We were able to identify their efforts to conduct spy campaigns and infiltrate the party and our ballot access drives. So we have evidence of that. We've suspected it's been going on for a long time, but we finally had evidence. This was bought and paid for by the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. So, we now know what they're up to, and I think we can be pretty sure that their efforts to illegally interfere and to basically use fraud and corruption and abuse in order to silence their political competitors. I think we can be pretty sure that that's still going on. And it is a badge of honor that we make them that nervous, and that is our job. That is a success, and that's something that we very much need to keep doing. Today or tonight, I want to focus on kind of the broad view here, the big picture of what's going on, both looking at what happened in the election and really what's happening in the world. The title of tonight's talk is Rising Up Green as Empire Falls Down. And this is kind of, in a nutshell, what is going on right now. And by empire, of course, I mean the US and its allies, described by Martin Luther King as the greatest purveyor of violence. And that violence, as we know, is not just military, it's also economic, social, racial, ecological, and so on. And that violence and that empire goes hand in hand with oligarchy, with a war on working people here at home, crushing inequality, rising fascism, and so on. And all of this makes this empire extremely unsustainable, unjust, unconscionable. And of course, the genocide going on in Gaza is, I think, sort of a symbol of what is absolutely intolerable and what we are fighting against. Um, the points that I want to make tonight, very simply, and I want to try to leave a lot of time for discussion. The first point is that empire is falling and failing, kind of like a patient in an intensive care unit. This is a multi-system failure, crushing inequality, climate collapse, endless war verging on nuclear, rising fascism, et cetera. It's what we see going on in LA right now, which is so tragic. And my sympathies go out to anyone who's, experiencing the catastrophe of that. This is a catastrophe that's been very long in the making, a catastrophe which is really a symbol of what is wrong with oligarchy and a power structure that is working for the wealthy few, whether that's the real estate industry, the fossil fuel industry, in particular, leading to the crisis in LA and the fires, which have many origins, and we can talk about that more later if we have time. But it certainly is kind of an indicator of how empire is seriously failing, not only the climate crisis, but water mismanagement, um, the power of the real estate industry to build wherever it wants, whatever it wants, the agriculture industry, and the privatization of water, which has also contributed to this crisis. So, LA is sort of the symbol of the moment on our failing empire, but so too, of course, is Gaza and Ukraine and, the recent events in the Middle East, which represented the actions of the U.S. and allies and others, Turkey, the Al-Qaeda derivative, and their power to basically take over Syria and begin to dismantle Syria. And it seriously changes the balance of power, at least for the moment, surrounding Gaza. And there are enormous concerns around that for everyone, including the people of Syria, who, have not had real choices here all along. And in some ways are liberated for the moment to some extent. But what they've been liberated to is hardly a solution and is a very worrisome situation for the people of Syria right now, as well as for the region. So anyhow, the first point being that empire is falling. And we'll come back to kind of the main ways in which it is falling. But the second point is that people are rising in very powerful ways that the powers that be do not want us to know about. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the ways that empire is failing right now, because as Greens, we are very familiar with that, and we talk about that all the time. But it's really important, I think, for us to be mindful of the ways in which we, the people, are fighting back, not only here in this country, but around the world. And the balance of power is shifting in a very big way that gives great cause for, I think, not just optimism, but for recognizing that there's a very powerful fight back going on, which we are a part of. And then, the third major point here is that we do have the power. It is essentially a psyop that tells us that we are powerless, that resistance is futile, and this is the message of the Democrats and continues to be that we Greens were so silly and who do we think we are, to have challenged power because everybody's obviously so happy with the condition of their lives and the way that our country and the world is being run, but this is basically the message of the Democrats, that resistance is futile and let's all just, roll over and go back to brunch, even with Trump coming in, or at best, let's go back to the Democratic Party as if they were going to solve this for us. But we hear that message of powerlessness over and over again. And I want to convey some, exciting things that tell us that, in fact, or I should say, that remind us that we actually do have the power. In the words of Alice Walker, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. Or in the words of Malcolm X, it's not that we're outnumbered, we're just out-organized. We're out-organized because they have a stranglehold on a lot of resources. And the more you've got, the easier it is to get more and to bribe government. And, that in a nutshell is the condition of our political system. But it doesn't have to be that way. We do have the numbers. We have the values of everyday Americans, and we really do have the potential to help build very timely and powerful, unstoppable, actually, coalitions. And I hope to give a couple examples of that. So, starting back again, I'll just say that the Democrats in this last election again proved that they are incapable of actually fighting on behalf of working people. Their agenda was mostly, we're not Donald Trump, but join us Republicans. And they were very standoffish against Bernie Sanders and his people's agenda, but and forbid Sanders really from having any public role in the Democrats' campaign. But the Cheneys, including the endorsement of Dick Cheney and the very active role of his daughter, Liz Cheney, that's kind of where the Democrats were at. They ran really as Republicans light, and they continued to lead the charge for war and censorship, and the Wall Street agenda. I think people were very mindful of their Wall Street agenda. Joe Biden had promised Wall Street that nothing will change before his first election. And, that basically continued to be the promise. And now we're told to think that the American political landscape has shifted to the right. And the Democrats are claiming this, as they adopt more and more Republican policies, for example, on immigration, where they are now all about the wall, all about bashing immigrants and deportations. So, the message out there is that, oh no, things are moving to the right. But actually, that's not true. And statistics show over and over again, the problem here is that the progressive demographic is not voting and is staying home. And that's younger, of color, and lower income. That's who's not voting. And it's over 1 out of 3 eligible voters who didn't vote in this last election. And we saw many of the progressive Democratic of the progressive demographics actually go over and vote for Trump, mainly out of anger against the Democrats. And I heard from Hispanics, for example, that they were voting for Trump until they heard about our campaign. And when I asked, well, why were you voting for Trump? And their answer was because it's Obama and Biden who have, been deporting our families. So in spite of the rhetoric, the reputation of the Democrats in particular is out there as the ones who've betrayed their promises. It's not like the Republicans have a progressive agenda in the least, but they don't make promises to be broken. So it's the Democrats, I think, who tend to incur the wrath of working people. And we've seen working people really shift over to the right, not because they embrace that agenda, but mainly because they're horrified at NAFTA, at the loss of health care, millions of people who were thrown off of Medicaid under Joe Biden, and so on. The Wall Street bailouts, of course, as well. So the Democrats really walk around with carrying a lot of baggage from what they've done. They threw out some 8 or 9 million homeowners while they bailed out Wall Street to the tune of trillions. That was, under Obama in 2008. So again, don't believe what they tell you. And here we are now with everyday Americans really struggling 66% right now are living paycheck to paycheck. Half of Americans are struggling to keep a roof over their heads. At least 40% of Americans say that it's really difficult for them to just meet daily living expenses. And yet, the wealth of billionaires is going off the charts. They and Both parties are squandering over half of our congressional budget on the war machine. And, the numbers being spent now on Ukraine and on Israel are off the charts. I won't talk about ecological collapse because I think as Greens we're pretty well aware of that. But, this is certainly a major way in which empire is failing. Um, and I want to point out that even while, there are setbacks right now in the Middle East, in fact, Israel is barely hanging in there. Its economy is in a shambles. Its army is completely exhausted. Tourism is dead. According to a recent poll, 1 out of every 3 Israelis was planning to leave. Over 60,000 people who evacuated from the north uh, are, they can't go back, and they're not going back, even with this alleged ceasefire, which is extremely tenuous at best. And the reputation of Israel, and of course the U.S. along with it, is as, just the war criminals of the world right now. So empire pretends that it's succeeding, but it is definitely not. And while Israel and the U.S. have benefited by essentially overthrowing um, Assad. And that's a complicated story because Assad, clearly did not have much support in the people of Syria. There's enormous opposition against him from people that I know and talk to in the Middle East, and especially from Syria. So, it was a very mixed bag. But in doing that, the Israel and the U.S. appear to have had a great success as far as they're concerned. But what that looks like is very problematic, and it's not clear how long that is going to give a benefit to Israel. The benefit to Israel, obviously, is that the supply lines for the resistance to genocide has really been eviscerated. So it really changes the dynamics right now. It's a very it's a moving target right now, and it's hard to keep up with it day to day, what the latest is. But that's certainly, at the last I've heard, that this appears to be a big setback for the people fighting the genocide and trying to stop the genocide. And one thing I would just say to that is that, remember, at the end of the day, the power is really in our hands as the American public here, more than whatever's going on in Syria or anywhere else in the Middle East. It is the U.S. which is the driver of the genocide. And in the U.S., we who oppose the genocide are the overwhelming majority. 68%, according to one poll, oppose the genocide, and over 60% want an immediate weapons embargo. So if democracy prevailed, the genocide would be over. And Israel would be forced to abide by international law, which is the only way that this is going to get solved. So it's important, I think, not to surrender to hopelessness here, which is the way this is being framed, but to, instead to really double down on our power, our collective power, through the likes of boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And I want to give a shout out, by the way, to the county council in Alameda County, which recently passed basically a divestment ruling, and they had already divested, I think, from Caterpillar some $12 million, and now they will divest another 20 million. This stuff adds up. This stuff is very powerful. And there are ways, I think, that we can leverage the majority opinion and the deeply held values of the American people, as well as people around the world, who want to shut down this genocide. And regardless of what what is going on elsewhere in the Middle East, we have the power to stop that. And we have always had that. And they really want to make us forget that. And so, the name of the game here is remembering that we do have the power and, strategizing on how do we assert that power. Um, let's see, a couple words about Ukraine. Just that, you know, Ukraine is also uh, a disaster. And, I think it's widely recognized that Ukraine is very much losing the battle. It's the Ukrainians who themselves are, paying the greatest price, and an entire generation has been lost. And the U.S. is trying to push the draft down into teenage years in order to throw the teenagers into the meat grinder. The people of Ukraine now, by majority, oppose the war and want a negotiated solution as quickly as possible. So if the Ukrainian people had anything to do with this, and if people in the US who really do not support the continuing expenses for Ukraine, and it is somewhere around $180 million that have been spent. It's about 60 million that have been military aid to Ukraine, but it is a huge amount of money spent over since 22, since February of 2022, that is being spent on this war. The people of Europe, I should mention, have also had it with this war. And to look at current polls, public opinion now in Europe has really changed, and not everywhere, but most countries. I think Sweden is one exception, but the others are either very close now, or opposition to the war now prevails over support for the continuing war. Europe has also paid a huge price in terms of its economy, and this has everything to do with the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline and Europe's access to affordable fossil fuel energy. And the nature of this transition, has been devastating. And instead of getting cheap Russian gas, Europe has been forced to purchase U.S. gas at about 3 times the rate. And this has everything to do with why their economy has completely gone into the tank, which in turn is why their governments are now toppling. And most recently, Germany and France had votes of no confidence. So the old neoliberal governments who have supported the U.S. energy policies in shutting down their access to energy, and the continuing war effort, which has also devastated their economies. So all of this is really contributing to a real shift in the global balance of power. And this is another way in which empire is now falling and failing, because the old alliances have now become very burdensome and destructive to our old allies. So this too is undergoing change. And I should mention also, that this has led to just extraordinary nuclear risks. And this too is being led in particular by Joe Biden, who has not only given the thumbs up, but who's actively participating in the assault on Russia by these long-range missiles that are firing into Russia. And because these are our weapons, and because our boots on the ground are actually conducting these assaults, we are technically at war with Russia. And Russia has reason to escalate. And that could be directly attacking NATO facilities with conventional weapons. It could also be to, in their minds, defend themselves with nuclear weapons. And to think back to the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is essentially what this is right now. This is a Cuban Missile Crisis in reverse, where Russia is defending its borders, potentially with nuclear weapons, as we were doing back during the Cuban Missile Crisis when there were Russian nuclear weapons in Cuba. And we had actually the planes with the nuclear bombs were in the air, and we were prepared to drop them. But there were leaders at that time who were willing to negotiate, that is Khrushchev and Kennedy. And unfortunately, the U.S. has refused to negotiate up until now. So that is an extremely scary situation, and represents another way in which empire is failing and is failing us. I should also mention that when the U.S. Dissolved one of the critical nuclear treaties, the INF Treaty, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which prevented the use. It outlawed the use of these intermediate or short-range missiles. And these are dangerous because they don't give warning time. So they incentivize knee-jerk decisions and prevent an opportunity for a phone call to try to clarify, is this actually an incoming nuclear missile, or is this just some mistake on the radar? All that those constraints go out the window with these short range and intermediate range nuclear weapons. And when the U.S. dismantled that treaty, we pulled out, and then Russia pulled out. When we pulled out of that treaty, we gave Russia then reason to defend itself against these intermediate range missiles. That's when Russia went ahead to develop the Oreshnik missile, and I don't know if people are familiar with that. That is these are this whole new class of hypersonic missiles, which go way faster than anything that we have. These missiles travel at like 1.5 miles per second. So these are just like astoundingly fast missiles. We cannot defend against them. And we do not want to be in the business of confronting Russia now. And we need to prioritize not only restoring nuclear treaties, but also restoring diplomacy rather than kind of the bully in the schoolyard approach to international relations, which has been, the mode of operating for both Democrats and Republicans. So this is all to say, again, empire is failing us. It's not only failing us, but it's putting us in the target hairs. There's no such thing as a limited nuclear war. There's no such thing as a local nuclear war. Any real exchange of nuclear weapons goes into nuclear winter, which is global, and we die of starvation, to put it simply in so many words. Now, let me just also point out that it's not only in military dimensions, in climate and social justice and so on, but also basic economy is not working out so well for us right now. And basically, the U.S. and its allies have been overtaken by BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. BRICS has now been joined by 10 new members and 8 new partners. So BRICS now has the majority of the global GDP. And they have been on a massively accelerating trend, while the G7, that is the U.S. and its allies, have been on a declining trend. So these trends are going in a very definite direction now, where indicating that the U.S. empire is really not the boss of the world anymore, but we seem to think that we are, and it just drives home that we need to move from this notion of being a monopolar world ruled by the USA to being a multipolar world governed by international law, human rights, and diplomacy. We need to go from being the bully in the schoolyard to being an adult in the room with other sovereign nations with whom we have, collegial relations based on, really solid and important values and principles. Let me just say a few words about the fight back here, and the way in which people are rising. So, if our first point was that empire is falling, I want to now get over to the subject of how people are rising, because there is, there is a very important uprising that is in full swing. We're not supposed to know about it. We're not supposed to think about it, and we're not supposed to, be a part of it. So, as I mentioned before, you can look at local things here. So let's just say a few things about local trends, and then we'll talk about global trends. So I mentioned before about Alameda County, because of the work of grassroots groups in opposition to apartheid and genocide. There was a very successful divestment campaign, and this is going on, all over the country and all over the world. In Portland, Maine, as well, where we have a Green Party member of the city council. Portland, Maine passed a divestment resolution. So, some city councils are passing ceasefire resolutions, and others are going on to actual divestment resolutions. So, there's very important progress that's being made there. Several California towns are suing their members of Congress for betraying basic tax accountability, for using our tax dollars for genocide, and for failing to support the constraints that Bernie Sanders had demanded. This was going back a month or two, and there were something like 20 senators who voted in support. But that meant, out of 100 senators, many who did not. So, there's a huge amount of work to be done. And there is now a thing whereby communities are suing their congresspeople for failing to act responsibly with our tax dollars. In fact, doing the opposite of what our communities have expressed over and over again. There have been, blockades of weapons manufacturers going on across the country, and, activists who have very courageously been arrested, in order to inconvenience the masters of war. And I want to give a shout out for the students at MIT who they not only overturned, and they had dismantled a contract, a weapons research contract with Lockheed Martin. They did that several months back, but now they have gotten wind of secret contracts that MIT has with Israel. These are contracts that are being funded by Israel for research on weapons to be used in genocide. And specifically, these weapons, MIT is doing breakthrough basic science research that would enable drones to network with each other. So instead of just facing a single solitary drone, people would be surrounded by an army of drones, hundreds or potentially thousands. Drones cannot communicate with each other right now, so you can't have a flock of drones. But the research going on at MIT would enable that to happen. It would also enable robots, including the war dogs, which are, robotic dogs that do horrific, things. You could have an army of them too. So the students, and this is largely students for justice in Palestine, who are students, and they, I think, learned about this through other students who were as part of their coursework. were supposed to participate in this research. And so they are really raising the alarm right now. The Electronic Intifada covered this, I think, last week. And I think Chris Hedges interviewed one of these students. And the students are now all being targeted for expulsion by MIT. So we're trying to mobilize to help protect them because they are, doing an incredible service to us all because, the horrific stuff taking place in Gaza is not going to stay in Gaza, So we're not free till Gaza is free. And the abuse and horrific, draconian, Orwellian, dystopian weapons that are being developed against the Palestinian people can be used against any of us. So it's very important that we stop this. And it's so incredibly, to speak so highly of these students that they completely put themselves and their lives and their careers on the line in order to expose this. So hopefully you'll be hearing more about that. I want to mention what happened in Mexico with Morena, the Morena Party, which, first came, they won the presidency in Mexico's last election with AMLO, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. He left office. In fact, has his successor been inaugurated yet? I'm not sure if she's been inaugurated. Claudia Sheinbaum, who's also from Morena. So AMLO left office with an 80% approval, and Sheinbaum, his successor, was elected with a 60% vote of support, which was twice as much as the conservative candidate. So this has been a huge flip in Mexico's politics and really represents a triumph of progressive people-powered politics. And Morena represents a coalition of small parties of largely the left that came together first as social movements and then as a political movement. And it has huge lessons for us, I think, about, how to fight this battle, and is extremely, I think, uplifting in how it shows how the tables can be turned, that you can be dominated, as Mexico was, by a neoliberal party for 70 years, whose corruption just finally became too much for people to take. And so they began to fight back. What was their first move? It was to elect a conservative government, to move from their, sort of Democratic Party equivalent to their Republican Party equivalent. And then, they discovered, well, that's no solution either. And it was at that time that Morena was founded. It was actually 2014. So they haven't been around that long. But not only do they control the presidency, this time they were elected to 2/3 of one of their houses and almost 2/3, just like 2 votes shy of 2/3 majority in the other one. They also control most of the governorships now. So it's been an incredible triumph of people power. And part of the strategy here was getting people to vote. And so their voter registration skyrocketed, and also voter turnout. So there were really exciting changes that took place because people have had enough with their lives just being, made a shambles. And it's not only Morena. Right now it's France. In France, there also was a coalition of progressive parties. This is about 6 months ago that unexpectedly won a parliamentary election that was expected to be won by the extreme right. And so the parties of the left came together and said, let's work this out so that we're not competing with each other. And they prevailed. Macron, the president, refused to act on that election, and he appointed a conservative, from his party, neoliberal prime minister, and that prime minister's government just fell. So just like last week, the government of France fell. The continued neoliberal government in the face of a real rising up of a left coalition. So it's another case of how, people are rising, and they are rising in Europe. And this has everything to do with the Ukraine war and with the US blow up of the energy supply and the mincemeat that has been made out of their economy by basically taking instructions from the U.S. So there's a very dynamic situation going on there right now. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there, basically just to say that, we're in very stormy waters right now, to say the least. And in many ways, empire appears to be stronger than ever. But that is, pretty much a psyop. They are not. Their strength is really paper thin, and their actual support, even in this country where the duopoly, commands the airwaves, but they do not command the hearts and the minds of the American people. And people around the world are rising up to demand that power structures be accountable to everyday people. And there are examples all around us that I think we can take heart and, some learn lessons from to put to work ourselves. And in the meantime, as we continue to be vilified and more often ignored, but occasionally vilified as well, I think it's important to see that for what it is, which is the empire really quaking in its boots as we, the people, stand up and demand the future that we deserve. It's really clear, it's clearer than ever, we're not getting out of here alive, and we're not going to last a whole lot longer at the rate that we're going. So we kind of have no choice. And I just really want to encourage people to operate with the strength of your convictions and the strength of our agenda and our kind of common knowledge and the incredible work that so many people have done to create this infrastructure for the Green Party, which is now the leading people-powered political party that is giving the parties of war on Wall Street a real run for their money. So, the future is ours for the taking. Thank you all so much for your kind attention, and we can open it up to discussion.
Thank you so much, Jill, for everything you do and for being here this evening. I'm Justin. I'm a volunteer with the Green Party of Alameda County in California, and I'm just going to help facilitate the discussion. So go ahead and raise your hand and get on stack, and we can take them in the order they come for the most part. And there's a lot of people, so if you could keep your question or comment to about a minute, and we'll see how many we can get through. And I'm going to suggest we take 3 at a time. Let me know if you have any other thought about that, Joe.
That's a good idea.
Okay, go ahead, Felina, you're up.
Dang, I gotta go first. Okay, hold on. Oh, okay. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Felina.
Hey. So, the buzz right now is TikTok. I know your last post was on the 3rd. Are you planning on doing anything over there on these last days as everyone figure out where they're going to go? And the fact that there's a huge boycott of deleting our social media accounts, which would be hard for a lot of us because it's like, ooh, I'll be losing have to switch admins for a lot of stuff if this massive deletion is going to happen. But it looks like the CEO is like, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing this. So, yeah, what's your take on that? It's really going to hurt our fundraising when it comes to the Palestinians, and that's what's so heartbreaking about it too, because they definitely was getting more reach over at TikTok. So,
Yeah, terrific.
Okay.
I'll come back to that when we've collected a couple, and thank you for those sentiments. I think you're speaking for all of us here. Thank you, Felina.
Right, we got Christopher, followed by Baba.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Stein, for that inspiring talk. I'm Chris Jewell from Marin County, And I think could you address the need to, you touched on it in your talk, the need to ally with other left-leaning parties and form a sort of a global movement, just like they did in Spain and France. And how are we going to achieve that?
Great. Thank you.
And Baba, go ahead, unmute.
Hi, I'm Baba Kofi Usajana in Santa Clara County, and um, I'm wondering. I took a look at the people who didn't vote. Like 39% of people didn't vote, which is bigger than all the other groupings. And their concerns seem to be mostly about the greedflation and how it's affected grocery prices and other things ancillary like rents. And so I think we should be focusing on price controls, especially with things that people need the most, like food and paying for a roof over their head. So that's my contribution there. How do we do that?
Yeah, I really appreciate all of these questions, and each of these points are really important. And each of them, I think, really deserve continuous and ongoing attention from us as the party. So, as someone who's been involved with the party since 2002 was my first run, I have so come to see the answers to these questions as an issue of what kinds of committees are we developing, and then what kinds of programs are we putting together? Because this is just way more than sound bites. And Felina, I have to just fill you in that one of the things that I'm still struggling with is unwinding our campaign. It's not easy to run for president, and especially if you run on public funding, then you have a huge burden after the campaign to jump through lots of hoops with the FEC. And if you miss on any of those hoops, you get huge fines. So I am a bit tied down right now, and I want to give a shout out to a whole bunch of volunteers who are helping us. We have to do this audit, and I see one of them right in front of me, Henry Rose. Big thank you to you. And if anybody else has time on your hands and you know how to work an Excel file, get in touch with me, because we have to get this out of the way so that we can get down to our real work. And we come out of this election with a big head of steam. We could be doing a lot of fundraising right now. And we do not. We were told that we could just raise $200,000 and have basically an accounting service do all this after stuff with the FEC. Well, we don't want to raise $200,000 to deal with the FEC. We want to raise $200,000 to increase the hiring, and the staffing of the Green Party so we can have more effective committees and run more effective campaigns. We want to fundraise forward, not going backwards. So we got to wrap this stuff up. So that's why I'm not posting on social media right now, because we don't have any staff to do it. And I don't have time because I'm totally tied up with this FEC set of deadlines. So, everything in that context, we are very much hoping to go full bore, helping the Green Party fundraise and, staff up and help build our committees and, at the national level so that they can provide assistance at the state level, because we need a much bigger presence on social media across the board. Yeah, I mean, for TikTok to be shut down is absolutely horrible. And there's not a quick fix here. Can we all call up our congressional members? Everybody call your Congress member and scream, and send them emails. This should not be allowed. This is absolutely outrageous what they're doing here. And this is an effort to shut down the most rebellious and empowered sector of the population, so that we're not able to communicate with each other. And that's what they're doing. And it does make everything more difficult if they shut down TikTok. So we need to be heard as much as we can. Christopher's question about allying with other parties. Well, after this meeting. I'm going to be meeting with Shama Sawant in follow-up to our work over the election and in anticipation of of a conference. I think it's February 22nd in Seattle. And, there are many of these efforts going on right now for us to come together. There is a coalition in Florida. It's a labor community coalition that's also bringing people together across parties. This is happening all over the place. The Greens have always been involved in this, and we're still at it. So stay tuned and expect to hear more soon. And is it Baba? Do I have your name right? Who was talking about the greedflation. Yeah, absolutely. Price controls, there are many solutions here, and putting a halt on greedflation, which is a big part of this. The fossil fuel dynamics were also part of this, shutting down Russia's fossil fuel supply. We need an emergency Green New Deal so that we can phase out fossil fuels at the same time that we rapidly implement conservation and efficiency measures and ways to conserve on energy. And just thinking out loud here, we need rent control immediately. The things that people are really struggling with, it is food, it's healthcare, and it's housing, especially. And all of those have real solutions. We could move to a Medicare for all system that eliminates the heavy burden on working people and middle class. That basically reduces our costs, and our costs then go through a progressive tax in the tax base. But then people are not paying out of pocket for healthcare. That's what's really devastating everyday people right now. And these are solvable problems. How do we ever get to implementing a solution to any one of them? That all comes back to this overarching solution, which is that we need power. And we have the numbers. This is all about doing that outreach. And you're absolutely right, Baba, and forgive me if I'm not getting your name right, but where you talked about 39% of eligible voters who did not vote. That is exactly where the money is. That's why Morena, the party in Mexico, came into prominence, because they were able to mobilize those voters. And that's exactly what we have to do. In Massachusetts right now, there's been a real sea change, I have to say, from what I'm seeing. Coalitions, or I should say social movements that held us at arm's length, are no longer doing that. So we are now the go-to political vehicle for the reparations coalition, for example. And, likewise for the anti-genocide and pro-Palestinian coalitions right now. They are hungry for the political fight. So we are in a kind of an unprecedented position, in my experience right now, where people don't need to be persuaded that we are the voice of that 39% who's not voting, and arguably a whole lot more. And if you just go to the Breakfast Club, which is like a young Black hip audience. If you go to the Breakfast Club and you look at the interview that Butch Ware and myself did, you'll see the comments. There were 20,000 last time I looked that all said, I wasn't going to vote in this election, but after what I've heard tonight, I'm going out to register Green. This is why the Democrats then began to put out their advertising campaign, because they were horrified and terrified that they saw how ready people were to engage. And it's like not rocket science to see how this story could go if we really double down and make this work. And at the end of the day, that means working together in a political vehicle, which is an umbrella, really, of our social movements. And then we link those umbrellas so that we have the wider coalition. And these things are in the works, but we need, we need people power and we need everybody engaged. So I think that gets us through the first three. I'm sorry, not as quick as we need to go, but
Okay, great. Next up, we have Bill, followed by Orlando, then Jackie. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you. And thank you, Joe, for being with us tonight. A longtime supporter, and certainly in the most recent campaign, I'm a member of the Alameda County Green County Council. And a couple very quick comments and then a question. One is here in California, we have a difficult situation on the electoral front because of the way things are structured in the primaries. And we're hoping that somehow we can get Butch Ware on the ballot for November. I was on the last Green Party ticket that did run in the November elections in 2010. So we're looking forward to, regardless, we'll be supporting Butch. But the second thing I feel compelled to say is that I am also a member and in the leadership of a socialist group called Solidarity that includes a number of very active Green Party members, including Howie Hawkins. And we don't necessarily agree, as much as we agree that the U.S. empire is in shambles and is doing horrific things. We may not agree completely on how you assess Syria or Russia, but or Ukraine, but I don't want to mainly talk about that. My question is on the coalitional front. How do you envision labor, for example, playing a role in that?
yeah.
And also, how do these coalitions relate to the already existing networks around immigrant rights, which is going to be a critical area of struggle? I'll stop there.
Great. Terrific questions. We'll come back to that shortly.
Go ahead, you're up.
Orlando Johnson, hey, Geo, Credential
Hi.
Committee, Alameda County Council, long supporter. I just would personally like to say I thank you for all your hard work that you do. A lot of people don't know I'm on the Credential Committee. We've seen a lot of things that went on, a lot of difficult tasks. But for me personally, again, you have strong skin, you have a tough will, and keep up the good work. And to everyone that came on here tonight, go green 2025. Don't sell out, stay loyal, go green for life. Thank you.
Right.
All right, Jackie, you're up.
Okay. Hi, Jill.
Jackie.
So I'm really glad that you're doing this because I wondered what happened. You and I have been in touch for so long, and all of a sudden there's just nothing. And you explained what's happening. So here's my deal. Once you get past having to do the money part here and are ready to move forward, get whatever you need to me. I will get it out there. We also still have the Slack up and running from the campaign. And there's people on there that are ready, willing, and able to move forward with whatever project we decide to move forward with building the coalition. So that's going to be another good place for you to use. And then the last thing is, oh God, I've lost it.
Oh, great.
Well, I'll let you go because we're too busy. Yeah. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Oh, I know what the last thing was. I'm sorry. I just want to put forth that the Green Party is the only party right now that's made it into the third place that has the ballot access. A lot of these groups that are doing wonderful work members do not understand what it takes to build a party against corporate, unless you're going to take corporate money. We're looking for coalition building. We're not looking to change our party to any other name, to any other thing. We're in over 100 countries around the world. We are looking to strengthen the Green Party so that we have that tool in the coalition to build further and faster. Thank you.
Okay, great. Let's see. First, on the question of the role of labor, and also I want to agree that we're not going to agree on everything. That's okay. And my experience with coalitions is that you want to start with what you have in common and deeply held concerns, and then you want to work jointly on those things. And some of the things that we hold in common is like, democracy reforms so that we can have more choices, so that we can legitimize other voices. So ranked choice voting, proportional representation, reasonable ballot access rules, getting big money out of politics, collaborating on things like that. In fact, we have an op-ed coming out with the libertarians soon about ranked choice voting. And just finding our common ground and working on our common ground. We don't need to, we do not, in my experience, we don't really do ourselves any favors by saying, hey, we're all going to merge. We start by building a coalition that works together on things that we really, really need and care about. And we go from there. The role of labor is absolutely critical because at the end of the day, in my view, how we get any of the things we're talking about here, where the majority of the American people wants healthcare as a human right. They want to end this, genocidal war. They want to end this military budget that's consuming over half of our discretionary dollars. There's so much that we want to do, but our government won't do it. And there's no way that they will do it until we can change the structure. Labor is really critical for achieving some of these things, like, like a weapons boycott, for example. The American people want a weapons boycott. And if we had, for example, a one-day sick out, even, doesn't have to be a strike, it could just be a sick out, but a massive economic boycott where we show that we, the people, have some power here and our economy can, fly or crash based on power that we have. And if we had a large coalition that included students and labor, and especially labor, that's when you really begin to get traction on any, sort of strike or boycott. If you have labor involved, it's transformational. And one of the things that I think really needs to happen in the Green Party, we have GPACs, the Green Party Peace Action Committee. We have an Eco Action Committee. We don't have a Labor Action Committee. I think it's really essential that we do that. And, if there are people out there who want to be a part of creating such a committee, I think we need to do that as quickly as possible because our future, success in any realm here is really going to depend on showing support for labor, being there to help support their strikes, their boycotts, etc. We need to show support for them so that we can develop reciprocity and they become part of our efforts as well. And there is a lot of support within labor for ending the genocide. So I want to agree with your sentiments on that, Bill, that it's really important that we prioritize the role of labor. And on immigrant rights, I think that's really fundamental to groups that we would be working with. And, I think for many of us, during the campaign, our position on immigrant rights was very different from Democrats and Republicans. Our position is that the most important thing we can do to address the migration crisis is to stop causing it in the first place by ending the war on drugs, which empowers the cartels, which create the violence. That is by legalizing marijuana for starters, which is a major driver, and economic driver of the cartels. So there is stuff that could happen very quickly. We could end the sanctions, the economic sanctions on Cuba and on Venezuela, and reduce the flight of, of everyday people who are struggling against poverty, who are coming to our shores. Well, it's kind of karma that they're coming to our shores because we're creating the crisis here across the board. And that means to stop destabilizing governments, stop, this neo-colonial, corporate exploitation, and above all, the endless wars and the regime change operations. That's what's generating the migrant crisis. Migrants would rather not leave their homes and their communities and their families. Let's make that possible. And then let's treat those who come here with dignity. And instead of investing in a wall that accomplishes nothing except that it kills more people and destroys wildlife and ecosystems, instead of investing in a wall, we can invest in the civil the civil society, people to the paralegals, the attorneys, and the people doing background checks to ensure that people coming over are legit, and then give people papers so they can go to work. Because when immigrants go to work, they are not a burden, they are a boon to their communities. So this is really quite solvable. And I think we have that in common with most of the groups that we would be collaborating with, against war and genocide and the, stranglehold of Wall Street and all that. So I think that's a natural to be collaborating on immigrant rights. So I think I've covered most of the questions in that last batch. Forgive me if I missed any, but let's go on and keep moving. Thank you for your patience here.
Okay. Henry, Leonard, then Mike. Go ahead, Henry.
Hi, Jill. Thanks for devoting your life to this. I'm really excited about the lawsuit in California. I wish we could do the same in Massachusetts, specifically CD1. I'd like to sue Richie Neal. Do we have any chance of an attorney who would do pro bono work here? And what can we do to support those MIT students and students in general who are risking their economic future, everything when they protest?
Awesome. We'll come back to that. Thank you. Let's see. Who's next?
I'm next. I'm Leonard.
Okay, great.
It was so nice to invite me. I'm a European scientist visiting here, and I'm in the European, German Green Party. And I wanted to ask you a question that's important for us. But first of all, I wanted to make a comment. You when you talked about the government in France and Germany failing, you called them in the next sentence old neoliberal governments. In Germany, it was actually a social democratic, party going for democratic socialism, and the Greens were the second one. So I think this was a minor thing. But as a lot of governments are failing in Europe, and it's getting more and more unstable, we have a problem with the rising right wing, and mostly they're also neoliberal parties. How do you tackle the rise of right-wing parties, or what are your strategies on that?
Great. Terrific.
And Mike, you're up.
Thank you. Jill, I might have the wrong premise here, and if I am, I hope you'll straighten me out. But I attended the 2017 national conference of the Green Party, and I heard comments at that 2017 conference that at the end of your campaign in 2016, you developed a lot of infrastructure, but there was no capacity of the Green Party to kind of take that over and use it. And so as a result, a lot was lost. And I think, and I'm worried about that happening right now, that certainly your campaign is better organized than the Green Party national organization. And is there going to be a good transition? Is that the momentum that you've built with your campaign, is that going to be transmitted into the Green Party, or is that again going to be lost like it was in 2017 after your 2016 race?
Great. All right. Terrific questions. Let's see. So for Henry's question, I sent to Cheryl, Henry's wife, I sent her an announcement about a webinar for people who want to sue their congresspeople. And this webinar, I forget when it was going to happen. It might, yeah, I can't say when it is, and it might already have happened, but even if it did, you can probably get into the video. So there is a whole group that's looking to make this a thing that everybody can do. And one of the things that they address in that webinar, according to the announcement, was how you get a pro bono lawyer, how you get a pro bono lawyer to help you do this. And what are they called? I forget the name of the major, one of the major pro bono legal organizations that that has such people who are interested in doing this. So definitely get Cheryl to look through her email and find that, because that would, I think that would speak to exactly these questions. And yeah, and let's sue the pants off of Richie Neal. And let's challenge him as well. I don't know if we have someone who will challenge him. This is, Richie Neal is, what is he? He's like he's like the Democratic ranking member in Ways and Means, I think. And he's a complete, tool of corporations. Awful. He should be voted out for sure. Okay, let's see. And Leonard, yeah, well, my understanding is that the Social Democrats have become neoliberal, neoliberal sellouts in the same way that I must say some of the European Green parties have as well, especially the German Greens, who've been after us and after me for quite some time. And they are one of the reasons why our US party actually left the Global Greens, because the neoliberal sellouts have unfortunately kind of, been leading the charge among some of the European Green parties. There are some very good ones, though, at the same time. But this is a very interesting transition that many Green parties are going through. And in terms of like how to deal with the right wing, I think what happened in France is kind of the example of that, that the right wing was on track to win France's parliamentary elections. This was back, it might have been in March, some months ago. The right wing was on track to win, but then this coalition of left parties actually got together and they worked out in each district, the party that was the strongest would run the one candidate that would represent them all, so that they would not internally split the progressive vote, and they would all work together to build support for the one leading candidate. And that worked. It worked, and they won, and they beat back the right. The problem was that Macron would not recognize their victory. He should have allowed them to establish the prime minister position, but he wouldn't do that. So now and he nominated some, centrist, which we would call neoliberal Democrat, whatever his party is. I don't recall. But that prime minister then made a lot of compromises and basically adopted right-wing issues. And that government was just taken down with a vote of no confidence. So, the right wing is rising because those who claim to be liberal or progressive are not, like in the US Democratic Party, which pretends to be progressive, but has actually become a tool of Wall Street and the war machine. And that's why we see people shifting to the left, to the right in this country, mainly because they are tearing their hair out at the betrayal of the Democratic Party. So it's not that people are inherently for the right-wing agenda, but it's like the only option that's presented to them to fight against Wall Street. So they go for it. So to my mind, the solution here is a progressive agenda that actually meets people's material needs and for us to work together in coalition with the other parties of the left. And let's see, Mike, your question about how the fruits of our labors were really denied us coming out of the 2016 election because we had a lot of momentum. And I don't know if who was around at the time, but I think there was an infiltration thing going on, a little takeover thing within the Green Party. And a whole bunch of people came into the party for whom I was persona non grata. And once I was like prevented from doing anything, they left. They were here for about 2 years and they went into positions of power and then they walked away. I think this happens regularly, and that advertisement that we found that the Democrats made looking for people to infiltrate and to spy on and to sabotage the party. I think this is not like some wild idea. This is what happens all the time to small parties and parties of the left. Look what happened to the Black Panthers, an extremely extreme case of it. This is what is done to parties who challenge the power of empire and Wall Street in politics. We get infiltrated, and so it was hard to fight at the time, but I think we're in a very different place right now. In fact, there was a takeover effort, I'm sure, in Massachusetts. We had a bunch of people who came in during the election, and their cause was a rather fringe candidate who had absolutely no history with the party and who presented a rather bizarro agenda that didn't even represent the party, and they were all about that candidate and trying to get Massachusetts to support that candidate, not myself. And it was, fortunately, our party resisted that. They had people walking into open positions, open officer positions in the party because we are much maligned and hard to fundraise, and we're forever needing people. So we are extremely vulnerable to takeovers. And this typically happens to our candidates who are successful, that we are followed by takeover efforts, and sometimes takeovers actually during the campaigns as well. And I think this happened in Massachusetts. And when they saw that they could not take over and deny me the nomination of the party, they all left. And we just have to be prepared to be thoughtful. I mean, and to have contested elections so that you don't have people walking into open seats of power, open positions of power without having them have to explain themselves and who they are. And, for people to just walk in out of the blue and nobody have any idea who they are, and then suddenly they're running the party. This is not a healthy thing. I know this happened during Nader's race as well, that he had people come in and take over some of the political parties in order to try to deny him the nomination. And then they left. So this certainly goes on. I'm sure it happened in 2017. And this is why, this is why I think it's really important for us to get our FEC filings done and out of the way so we can fundraise now and harness the momentum and work together, because we have, the party in many ways is more functional than it has ever been and is less torn apart by factions which may in fact have been infiltration campaigns. So we're in better position right now to move forward. So if anybody is good working with Excel, we need your help, because we need a lot of volunteers now to try to do these filings and get them over and done with And, we train people, we work together and all that. So there are ways to get this done and to get it done quickly. And then we have a lot going on. And I will say that while I don't have time to be doing social media right now for the most part, but I am continuing to do press and interviews. So we are maintaining, our profile and a voice for the Green Party in the dialogue. I have an interview coming up with Sabs, who's wants to talk about coalition building, in fact, and wants to bring Chris Hedges and a couple other people together for us to talk about this. So we continue to have something of a profile. We just did an interview with a German outlet called Activism, that does really good work. And they have been a voice of opposition to the war in Ukraine and to the genocide long before it was permissible to even talk about this in Ukraine. I'm sorry, in Germany. And they've been really on the money, and we've been consistently, talking with them and others. So we continue to maintain some momentum out there. And I have to say, I showed up for a New Year's Eve celebration in Boston, where there was a Palestine solidarity parade and demo going on. And it was the biggest such congregation I've ever seen. It really took over the entire New Year's Eve celebration. And I was like brought up onto the stage, and I became the program, like completely unbeknownst to me, but they recognized, me and the party as their voice. And it became like a campaign event, with selfies and, people just declaring um, their allegiance really to the party. And these were not like an active group of people, but just people who oppose the genocide are really looking to us in the same way that the Reparations Coalition in Boston, which has a commission on developing a reparations program, at that event, they, used to be Democrats. They're not anymore. And now they're really very solicitous of us as Greens, and we were the only political party represented. So this is just in answer to your question, Mike. I don't think we have lost our momentum yet, but we can't wait, any longer than we absolutely have to. So we're just trying to get this monkey off of our back so that we can go ahead and really plunge in full bore and take it forward from here, because, we are pretty much the only show in town right now. We are the party here to provide an alternative to war on Wall Street. And we're pretty much it. The others who ran with a very similar agenda, did not get widely seen, really did not get on the ballot. And while we continue to work together, they don't have the head of steam that we have. And, so we have to do this. There is really no other way forward. So I'm very much looking forward to that and really appreciate everybody's continued hard work and dedication.
Jill, we had two more hands raised. If you have the time to take a couple more quick comments, we can do that, unless you're on to the next thing. Just wanted to check your time.
Yeah, let's see. I am a little bit late for my meeting, but that's okay. I will just try to do this as a lightning round.
Okay, it's Shar and Justin Beth, 30 seconds each. Go ahead, Shar.
Hi, thank you so much for being here and doing the incredible work that you're doing. So my first question is, what did you mean by the rulers in an empire are paper, like they have paper thin power right now, or they're like paper thin right now? Want to know a little bit more specifically what you meant there, if you want to elaborate on that. And then there is an entirely different social system design that I've been working with and that has been in the works for 30 years now by someone who has been in the field of understanding from the inside how it works and has done an incredible amount of work and years of recuperating from that and then designing a whole different system. If you're interested in scoping it out, if you have like 10 minutes just to like go through some of the subheadings, um, it's designed such that we get to actually directly participate in public matter decision making processes. It's providing a design system such that we all have survival dividends. So it's based on not needing to survive in order to participate in this world, so that the best parts of us can come out and in the world, which is what we're meant here to do. So anyway, there's so much more to talk about it. It's quite elaborate. It's quite brilliant. I myself am a UC Berkeley graduate, and I've never seen anything like this. I've worked in the field of social work and education primarily. So I'm happy to put that in the comments, but if anyone in your team and yourself are interested in having a look at that, it needs it needs support, because it's one guy who's poured his heart and soul into it for years, and you can only do so much as one person. So
cool. All right. Well, thanks for news about that. Yeah, definitely put it in the chat if you can, and we'll try to take a look. And paper thin, what I was talking about there was just that, like Israel appears to be totally in control, but in fact, Israel is approaching a state of collapse. Will conquering Syria or part of Syria and regime change in Syria, is that going to help Israel? Well, it will give them a boost for the moment, but is that going to change the dynamics in the long run? Israel's economy is toast, and Israel's army, they fight a 6-day war. They don't fight a 6-month war. They don't have the people to do it. They're absolutely exhausted. And are we going to provide boots on the ground? It wouldn't surprise me if it comes to that. And the American people will never tolerate that. Already the American people are screaming to stop funding this genocide. So that's kind of what I mean by, this is a very unstable power structure right now. And, the fact that empire is failing in every way imaginable, that our lives are really on the line. Our healthcare, our housing, is completely inadequate. Our health itself, is crashing and burning, as is the environment, and we're on the verge of the outbreak of potentially nuclear war. The whole system is not being run according to, just or sustainable principles. It does not have the buy-in of the American people. So it is waiting to happen. The collapse is waiting to happen. Empires collapse.
I hear that, and I'm sure that they are aware of that. I guess more specifically with my question, like, how can they not continue getting away with that? I'm sure they've kind of created other systems. Sorry to extend.
Yeah, and I think our only hope is to exercise power. And that doesn't happen without our building coalitions and without our developing actions with traction. And, that's why we need to strike, and we need to develop the capacity for a general strike, in a nutshell. Thank you.
Or an alternative. Anyway.
Okay, last comment from Justin Beth, and then back to you, Jill, to wrap up.
Hi, Jill. Thank you so much for all you do and for holding this tonight, bringing us together to organize. I love the quote from Malcolm: "We're not outnumbered. We're not outnumbered. We're out-organized." I know that you also were involved with Doctors Against Genocide around Christmas time to get that message out about the hospital in Gaza there. And I also, I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you out in Seattle on the 22nd with Worker Strike Back. And I hope we have a large screen party showing out there. My question is really in regards to congressional campaigns coming up in 2026. I'm with the Green Congressional Campaign Committee, as you well know. I'm hoping that you will be interested in possibly working with some of our candidates. I don't want to put you on the spot and ask you to be a candidate, but I would love to see that too, maybe in 2026. Just throwing it out there. But I think your guidance and your leadership would go a long way to really forming a solid block of candidates in 2026 for Congress so we can actually vote in people that will vote against these wars and genocide and for Medicare for all. Thank you, Jill, for your time.
Great. And I'll just say thank you, Justin, for your time and your work, and supporting candidates is a really important part of the work that we have to do. And, I think having some strong congressional candidates is terrific, as is having candidates for city council or state reps. And we just need to do all those things that a political party does, which is to help challenge power. And to do that, we have to run candidates to do it. And yeah, I think that's a responsibility of people who run for office. You have to help people come up and share what you've learned. And I've had plenty of help myself getting to this point here after 3 races at the national level. So I feel like, why should we all reinvent the wheel? And the party we have to do a much better job, and we need people like you joining our candidate support committees so we can compile this information and help make not only a platform and an agenda, but also what are your talking points, your key talking points, and just, what is the prototype campaign walk card look like, in campaign literature. We should have a library of suggested prototypes and best practices, things like that. That would just make it so much easier. In Rhode Island, the Progressive Democrats got together and they hired one team to help several candidates. There's no reason why we can't do that, why we, don't have a treasurer who can do the treasurer work for several campaigns, and likewise, fundraisers and all that. We should help people, systematize this and, just provide the help of finding staff. It's very hard for us as Greens to find good, experienced staff. And there are ways that we can kind of collectivize this process and make it much more efficient and affordable and successful for all of us. So, I think we've covered the waterfront here. Big thank you to everyone, to the Alameda County Greens for hosting us. Thanks to everyone for turning out. And thanks to new Greens for coming in, and to those who are thinking about becoming Greens. I think it's a very good place to do this work. And big thanks to the people who have stuck it out for so long, helping build the infrastructure and just doing the hard work of administration. It is very, it's not easy, and it's not especially glamorous work, but it's really great. It really helps. And we're all very indebted to you, because we need that in order to run candidates and do programs like we're doing here tonight. So with that, I'm going to just give everyone a big thank you. And if the Alameda County Greens could copy the comments in the chat, because I didn't have time to read them, and I'd love to be able to take a look. So if Justin, you can Justin Richardson, if you can possibly gather those up before the Zoom gets canceled, that would be great. So otherwise, let's keep fighting. I think things, it's not like things are, we'll put it this way. The change that we offer is more urgently needed than ever. And I think it's actually more possible. And it is a clear, looming possibility that the empire is very afraid of. And everyone should take that as a badge of honor and as encouragement to keep up the fight. Thank you all so much, and see you soon, I hope. Take care.